All right, is this build gonna go well? Yeah, dude. All right, let's get into it, guys. Let's go. All right, we are going to get into a new type of build today. It is going to be a Scarlet Rot build. We just put a poison build out 2 weeks ago, and you guys blew that video up. That was absolutely phenomenal. Thank you a ton for that. Thank you for all the support. It was super fun to just watch those viewer numbers go up and up and up, and to see so many of you guys comment, and I had so many great conversations with you guys, so thank you for that. But we're going to get into a Scarlet Rot build today. It is going to be a super fun build to play. I'm going to be honest with you guys. This was a build that I wasn't used to playing. There is so much in this build relying on damage over time. I would do my Scarlet Rot spells and I would inflict Scarlet Rot to the boss, and then all of a sudden I would turn around and the boss would be gone because the ticking damage is so intense on Scarlet Rot right now. It is super, super awesome. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the talismans. We're going to be looking at the armor. We're going to be looking at the weapons. We're going to be looking at a summon or two for you to use and a few more things. So guys, without further ado, let's get right into the build. So first and foremost, guys, just a little bit of a disclaimer here. You are going to see in all the clips that I've recorded for this particular video, I'm wearing a ton of different armor sets. I was just trying to figure out what would work best. The armor set that I'm going to go over right now is what you need to use because it is going to give you the most bang for your buck, and it's also going to proc your damage and give you a massive damage buff when Scarlet Rot is in the vicinity. So let's go right into the armor and the gear right now. So starting off right away, we're going to go to the armor first. I know that's typically not what we normally do, but we are going to go right to the armor. We are going to be wearing the mushroom crown. Now, there is no way to aesthetically make this look awesome. There just isn't. It looks absolutely ridiculous, but the reason that it is a must for this build is because you are going to be getting a 10% damage increase whenever rot or poison is in the vicinity. Now, this happens quite a lot when you're using this build because both of your weapons are going to be proccing rot and poison a lot of the times. Also, whenever you use a incantation that is a rot spell, this is also going to get a boost from that as well. So the mushroom crown is definitely the way to go. The next three pieces are purely aesthetic. I use them because they match somewhat, and I say match in quotes, match somewhat with the mushroom crown. We're using the veteran's armor, we're using the veteran's gauntlet, and we're using the veteran's greave. All these are going to give you a decent amount of poise because some of your spells you need to be able to be hit a few times so you don't get knocked out of them. That's the reason that we are using this particular armor right here. Moving up to the weapons, we are going to be using the Blood Anspur Rapier at plus 23 and also the Blood Anspur Rapier at plus 25. Now, going to the first one we are going to put a blood affinity on because you are already going to get Scarlet Rot with a buildup of 50. Now, if you use a Blood Ash of War on this weapon, I am using Blood Tax, which we will get into in just a moment, you are going to get a blood loss buildup of 112. Now, the reason this is so great is not only are you going to poison buildup from your other weapon, but you are also going to be building up Scarlet Rot, and you are also going to be building up blood loss. So, you are just going to be dealing out a ton of damage with this build. It's definitely a ton of fun. Definitely had a great time with this weapon. Now, here is the problem with this weapon. I'm going to tell you first and foremost, it is a thrusting sword. So you are not going to be hitting multiple enemies at one time with this weapon. You can get yourself into situations where you are just getting beat up if you aggro too many guys at one time. So would recommend only aggroing a few people at once, maybe one or two, taking them down and then moving on to the next. With the Blood Tax Ash of War with this weapon, I wanted there to be buildup of Scarlet Rot and blood loss as fast as possible, and with the Blood Tax Ash of War, you are going to be stabbing a ton of times in a row to get all those effects to be building up and building up and building up. So that is the reason for that. I really enjoyed this weapon so far, and I'm going to continue to use it with some other builds that I have in mind. This has a strength scaling of C, a dex scaling of C, and an arcane scaling of D. Moving on to our second weapon, we are using the same weapon, but we've put Poison Moth Flight on it, and this is just going to give it a poison buildup of 134. Like I said before, Scarlet Rot, blood, and poison buildup all at one time. This is just a no-brainer. It is really, really great to power stance these weapons because you are going to be constantly getting those effects to go off on the enemy, making you do a lot of damage. So now let's go look at the talismans here. First and foremost, we have the Dragon Crest Shield Talisman in our first slot. It's going to enormously boost your physical damage negation. Taking less damage, always a great thing in Elden Ring, especially when you get into the New Game Plus modes. Now, I will also have a breakdown of this build at the very, very end for levels 50, 100, and 150, just in case you want to play this build or try to attempt to get this build a little earlier in the game. Moving on to talisman number 2, we have Millicent's Prosthesis. This is going to boost dexterity, raise our attack power with successive attacks. This is great because we are successive attacking all the time with these 2 rapiers, and this is a dexterity and arcane build, thus boosting the dexterity, always a good time as well. Moving on to our talisman number 3, we're using the Shard of Alexander to greatly boost the attack power of our skills. Then in our number 4 slot, we are using the Kindred of Rot's Exaltation. This is going to really boost your attack power when poisoning or rot is in the vicinity, and since we are able to do both of those with this particular build, then this is going to be proccing a lot. Really good talisman, especially if you're trying to build up that rot and get that increased attack power. Moving back up to the weapon slots real quick, I do want to cover our Dragon Communion seal that we are using at plus 10. This is going to boost our Dragon Communion incantations. So, any of the incantations that deal with a dragon, this is going to boost the damage of them, and since this has an arcane scaling of S, this is going to be the best seal that we can use for this particular build because we have an arcane and dexterity build. It just goes hand in hand, makes sense. Moving into our Flask of Wondrous Physic, I am currently using the Stone Barbed Cracked Tear, which is going to temporarily make stance break easier. Because our weapons aren't hitting super hard, I figured this was a good match, and it does help stagger the enemies a lot more than if you don't have them, especially with the rapier swords. Then I also have the Dexterity Not Crystal Tier, and this is just plain and simply going to boost our dexterity. More dexterity is never a bad thing, especially in a dexterity and arcane build. The next thing I want us to look at real quick is our incantations that we are going to be using for this build. We're going to be using 5 in total. The first is Exix Decay. This is going to be a giant dragon head that spews Scarlet Rot breath all over the battlefield, inflicting Scarlet Rot damage, inflicting your enemies with Scarlet Rot. It is a great incantation, especially just to get as much rot on your enemies as possible. Highly recommend this one for this build. If you want to use one that doesn't cost as much FP, you can use Rotten Breath, which is the exact same thing. It just costs less FP and does a little bit less damage. Finally, our last damage spell is going to be Scarlet Aeonia. Now, this spell is a hoss. It hits twice, and it hits incredibly hard. The first time it has impact damage, the second time it explodes, spreading Scarlet Rot everywhere, and this is super rot, which means it's going to last longer and it's going to tick down for more damage than a normal rot spell would do, or a normal rot proc on a sword or weapon or something along those lines. The next incantation we're going to look at is Flame Grant Me Strength. This is just going to raise your physical attack power. You don't need the fire affinity from the spell, but it's always nice to have a spell that buffs you, so you can try this one on, see how it works for you. I like it a lot, especially before bosses. And the last incantation we're going to look at is, of course, Golden Vow. This is just going to give you a standard increase of attack and defense for yourself and your allies. Any free buffs to make a build better you want to use, because it's going to result in you being better, doing more damage, having more defense. Also a really great choice for this particular build. And the very last thing that we are going to be looking at here is going to be the summons that I recommend you use for this build. First and foremost is going to be the Mimic Tier. The reason being for this Scarlet Rot build is because the Mimic Tier is you, so it's going to have all of your Scarlet Rot spells. It's just going to be another character spreading Scarlet Rot around the battlefield on bosses. It is going to be awesome. Definitely use the Mimic Tier for sure. I also have the Rotten Stray Ashes. The only reason I have this here, more for aesthetic purposes, but the Rotten Stray can inflict Scarlet Rot damage on your enemies, which is why I have him up there. And then also the Black Knife Tiche is super good because not only are you going to be doing all the Scarlet Rot damage, with the ticking damage, you'll also be doing blood loss, and you'll also be doing poison damage. The Black Knife Tiche is also going to give you a dot spell that hits a boss and ticks down damage over time. So with that combination and all of your Scarlet Rot, poison, and blood that's going on, bosses are not going to stand a chance. And guys, right here at the end, I want to go ahead and show you what exactly your stats would look like at 50, 100, and 150 as you progress through the game, trying to get this build to work for you, just in case that is something you are interested in. Like I've said before, I am a new game +6, so I just like to have fun with the game and build the coolest and most fun builds that I possibly can, which is why I may appear over-leveled at times. And I really, really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much for watching the video, being a part of the community. I want to go ahead and ask, if you did like the video, go ahead and hit that like button. Also hit that subscribe. It would help me out a ton. I do have a ton more builds coming out over the next few weeks on Monday every single week. So, per usual, everyone, stay safe, enjoy the game, and I'll see you in the next one.